All right, we're going to take a few minutes to review all the major concepts that we learned this year in 7th grade social studies. This is everything you're going to need to know to be ready for the CRCT. Now, you'll remember that we started our year studying Southwest Asia, also known as the Middle East. Now, at various times during this presentation, I'm going to talk about other videos that you should watch. Now, the way you can watch those videos is to click on the main Prezi, that's the non-narrated one, that looks just like this one, but is not a video. You can click on the main Prezi and go to each of these videos and click the play button, and they will play them off YouTube for you. You can also find these videos further down on this web page. Now, this particular one here is a mapping video for all the political and physical features of Southwest Asia. You're going to need to know how to find all those on a map for the test, so be sure to come back and watch this video. So let's start talking about geography in Southwest Asia. Now, you will remember that Southwest Asia is where our three big monotheistic religions comes from. Those three monotheistic religions are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, remember that monotheistic means that they only believe in one God. All three believe in the God of Abraham, the founder of Judaism. Christianity, of course, was founded by Jesus, and Islam, of course, founded by Muhammad, reading the Quran as their holy book. Now, all three religions consider Jerusalem to be sacred, and with multiple faiths counting one city as sacred, that means you're going to have some conflicts over land here based on religion. You'll remember that Islam ended up being divided between the Sunni and the Shia. These are the two major divisions of Islam. About 80% are Sunni, while about 20% are Shia. It's all based on an argument over who the new leader should be after Muhammad died. Now, we also learned about some major ethnic groups in Southwest Asia. We have the Arabs, who are the largest ethnic group in the region. They originated on the Arabian Peninsula and live all throughout Southwest Asia and North Africa. We've got the Persians. The Persians speak Farsi. They come from the country of Iran, which is the largest Shia Muslim country in the world. We also learned about the Kurds, a relatively small group of Sunni Muslims who live in the mountains of northern Iraq and Syria and Turkey. Now, all three groups are predominantly Muslim, but remember, not everyone is going to be a Muslim just because they are Arab or Persian or Kurd. Among the environmental problems we see in Southwest Asia are water pollution coming from untreated sewage and also from spills from the oil industry, and a shortage of clean drinking water that is a result of that untreated sewage in some parts of some of the rivers, and particularly in the West Bank area in the aquifers. Now, among the economic problems is that there is an unequal access to the water and oil. Some countries have a lot of oil and some countries have none, which means that we have a lot of haves and have-nots. And of course, we get conflict and resentment that comes from that, as some countries are rich and some countries are poor. We also have conflicts over water. There's very few rivers in the area. There's the Jordan, the Euphrates, and the Tigris, and not all countries have access to the water in those rivers. And we know that there's been at least one war fought over the unavailability of this water. Okay, so let's zoom in over here and talk about history. Now, Southwest Asia had originally been part of the Ottoman Empire, at least until the end of World War I. After the end of World War I, the British and the French took over, and they partitioned all that land, the Arab land in particular, using artificial borders. And as we know, artificial borders were created at the whim of the British and the French and have nothing to do with pre-existing ethnic or religious lines. This means that these borders create a lot of conflict between ethnic and religious groups and their various historical claims to the land. We also talked about Israel. The Jews were motivated to establish the state of Israel for a variety of reasons. First of all, there's a religious connection to the land. This land, they believe, was given to them by God in the biblical covenant. This was land that they had once lived in before they were forced out by the Romans. We also have Zionism. This is a desire and movement of Jews to return to their ancient homeland. And of course, we've got some things that were pushing them. Anti-Semitism throughout Europe. This is horrible anti-Jewish discrimination, anti-Jewish racism. And the ultimate expression of that, of course, was the Holocaust in World War II, where the Nazis killed 6 million of them. All these things combined to really motivate Jews to return to the land of Israel and establish their own country there where they could control their destiny. Now, unfortunately, this has also led to a lot of years of conflict with Arabs, particularly Palestinian Arabs, who did live on that land before they came back and have their own religious and historical claims to that territory. We also learned about U.S. wars, various American wars that were fought in Southwest Asia. First of all, there's the Persian Gulf War that was fought in 1990-1991. This is when Iraq invaded Kuwait, led by Saddam Hussein over there. We invaded to liberate Kuwait from the Iraqis. Then in Afghanistan in 2001, after 9/11, the United States wanted to destroy Al-Qaeda, which was being harbored or hiding out in Afghanistan, and to, of course, get Osama bin Laden. We're still fighting in Afghanistan today. Also, we have the Iraq War in 2003. This is when the United States thought that Saddam Hussein was hiding weapons of mass destruction that we thought he might be able to sell or give to terrorists. It turns out he didn't have those, but we went to war with him anyway. Okay, let's take a look at government. So I want to point out, by the way, that we've got 2 government vocabulary videos here. One on citizen participation that shows a reminder of all of our different government icons for citizen participation. Will remind you how all those different citizen participation terms work. We recommend that you watch this. And we also have a video here on power distribution. That's a unitary, federal, and confederation. Those are some confusing concepts, so do come back and watch those videos. All right, let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, as you know, is an absolute monarchy. One of the few absolute monarchies left in the world today. That means that they have a king that rules over them. And as a result, the people in that country have very little freedom and very little citizen participation. Israel, on the other hand, is a parliamentary democracy. As a parliamentary system, the people rule, of course, and the people rule by electing representatives to the legislature in Israel, also known as the Knesset. And these representatives then choose their prime minister. And as a democracy, Israel has lots of freedom and lots of citizen participation. Iran, on the other hand, is a theocracy. It is ruled by religious leaders, Shia Muslim religious leaders at that. And being a theocracy, the people have very little freedom and very little citizen participation. Okay, after we talked about Southwest Asia this year, we then shifted to Africa. And of course, we have a great Africa mapping video here. Be sure to look for this video. They'll show you all the political and physical features of Africa, including the biomes, by the way. It's an easy map if you study it. So let's talk geography. Now, Africa is the home of 4 major climate regions that we've learned about. In science, those climate regions are known as biomes. That includes the Sahara Desert that dominates the northern part of the continent. The Sahel region, which is this narrow strip that runs just below the Sahara. The Sahel is semi-arid, which means that it is halfway between desert and grassland. We also have the savannas. That's the wide, huge grassland region of Africa that we think about when we think about nature movies about Africa and the Lion King and all that. The Savannah region is the largest biome in sub-Saharan Africa. That's where the majority of the population of Africa lives, is in the Savannah regions. And then, of course, we've got the tropical rainforest. The tropical rainforest, especially in Central Africa and on Madagascar, where we see a lot of moisture and an awful lot of biodiversity. Some people live there. Not as many as in the Savannah region, but also still a major climate region in Africa. Now, Africa is home to a lot of natural resources. These are just some of the valuable natural resources. They have gold, they've got diamonds, uranium in the southern part of Africa, and there's oil, of course, in Nigeria and Sudan. Now, there are 4 ethnic groups that we studied in Africa. First of all, there's the Arabs who live in North Africa. Their culture is almost identical to the culture of Arabs that are in Southwest Asia. We have the Bantu. The Bantu is the largest overall group, although they're more of a language group than an ethnic group. We find the Bantu all throughout Central and Southern Africa. We've got the Ashanti, a fairly small group in Western Africa. The Ashanti are very rich culturally, although they are somewhat small. And the Swahili, who live along the eastern coast of Africa. The language of the Swahili has been adopted by modern Africans as the international language of Africa. Now, both the Arabs and the Swahili are predominantly Muslim. So the Arabs and the Swahili practice the religion of Islam, while a large portion of the Bantu and the Ashanti practice traditional, or also known as tribal, African religions, including animism and ancestor worship. Now, the environmental problems in Africa boil down to 2 major things: deforestation and desertification. Now, they're both really the result of the fact that the population in Africa is rising, which means we need more food to feed all these people. We also have a lot of parts of Africa that have poor soil. And when you have poor soil, you still need to figure out a way to grow your food. So frequently we see things like slash and burn agriculture, or overgrazing, or overcultivation being used to grow this food. And slash and burn agriculture results in deforestation. People cutting down trees for firewood. That's actually a very, very large cause of deforestation. People simply cutting down trees for firewood for fuel. So we see a lot of deforestation and desertification. Desertification, of course, permanently converts useful farmland into desert. When it's permanently converted into desert, you have desertification. The place where that happens the most right now is the Sahel region. And the Sahel, that's right along the southern edge of the Sahara, that's already halfway to being a desert to begin with, so it's very easy for that to go all the way into desert. Some notable features for Africa, geographically speaking. The Sahara is so big that it divides the continent culturally. What people normally think of as Africa in terms of culture is what we refer to as sub-Saharan Africa, Africa below the Sahara Desert. Africa north of the Sahara Desert is what we look at as Arab Africa, North Africa. You also remember that the Nile River is the world's longest river, and Africa is the second largest continent in the world. So let's take a look at some of the history in Africa. Now, the history that we spoke about for the most part starts in the late 1800s. That's when the Europeans colonized Africa. They wanted things for themselves, of course. They had their own selfish reasons for colonizing. Among the things they wanted were natural resources to make stuff in their factories. They wanted markets to sell their goods. They wanted to spread the religion of Christianity. And of course, there's always the prestige and bragging rights to brag to the other European leaders that you have more colonies than they do. In the process, they had a meeting at the Berlin Conference where they divided up Africa using artificial borders. And as we've learned before, artificial borders lead to conflict. Now, as the Africans developed a sense of nationalism, this is the desire to rule yourselves, they began to fight for independence in different parts of Africa. There were three basic case studies that we examined. We looked at independence in Nigeria. The independence movement in Nigeria was actually a peaceful one. It was done through the political process. In Kenya, independence from the Europeans, in this case the British, was achieved through a violent rebellion. And in South Africa, the independence movement there was led by the white Boers. So and when South Africa became independent, it became an independent African country that was still run by white people. We looked at Sudan, and Sudan was a good case study for us of civil wars. Civil wars throughout the region, and especially in Sudan, were the result of those artificial political borders, causing conflict between different ethnic groups, hatred between different ethnic groups that perhaps would not have been there if those European-imposed borders were not put there. Now, in the case of Sudan, to help ease the conflict, one part of Sudan, South Sudan, became an independent country. And we learned about how they had a vote for that to create an independent country to end their civil war with the rest of Sudan. That did help to end the civil war with between South Sudan and the northern part of Sudan, but it has not ended the violence in the region. We also looked at South Africa and apartheid. Remember that apartheid was that system of racial separation in South Africa. A famous man named Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress fought to end apartheid. The white government of South Africa was eventually pressured, largely through foreign embargoes that hurt their economy, to get rid of apartheid. The last white president of South Africa, named F.W. de Klerk, worked fairly closely with Nelson Mandela to help end apartheid. Okay, we're going to take a look down here at government. And in Kenya, their system of government is a presidential democracy. They have a lot of freedom in Kenya, although it's not perfect. There are some issues with freedom of speech and the right to criticize the government, but it is a country with a lot of personal freedoms. In South Africa, the modern South Africa has a very functional democracy. They follow a parliamentary model where the citizens elect their representatives to the legislature, and those representatives choose their leader. Slightly confusingly, South Africa calls their leader a president, even though they are not a presidential system. They are a parliamentary system. And in South Africa, people have lots of freedom and lots of citizen participation. We know that one of the problems in Africa is a problem of unstable governments. A lot of African countries are led by corrupt dictators or other governments that simply are not able to take care of their problems. And unstable governments make a lot of problems over there worse. You see a lot more civil wars when you're dealing with unstable governments. Unstable governments cannot respond well to famines, meaning that a lot of people will end up dying from starvation as a result. Unstable governments make the problem of HIV and AIDS much worse because they do not respond to disease crises the right way and effectively, making those diseases worse. And unstable governments contribute to the fact that access to education is not good in many parts of Africa. And usually when you don't have good access to education, it's the girls who are the ones who are left out of the education process. Girls frequently do not go to school in Africa. All right, so after we learned about Africa, we learned about Southern and Eastern Asia. And like the other regions, we have a really good mapping video here for you to help you remember all the political and physical features. Don't forget to watch the mapping video. So let's talk geography. Now, we learned about the 5 big religions in Southern and Eastern Asia. We learned about Hinduism. Hinduism is a religion from India, and it focuses on karma and reincarnation. Buddhism, a related religion, also believes in reincarnation. This one was created with the focus of ending suffering. Islam is a major religion of southern and eastern Asia. And remember that Islam, of course, focuses on obedience to God, obedience to Allah. Confucianism, this comes from China, not technically a religion, a philosophy. Confucius focused on proper behavior in society, knowing your place, and being respectful. Shintoism, that is the religion of Japan that focuses on nature worship, worshiping the nature spirits called kami. The environmental problems in Asia, they boil down primarily to air pollution and water pollution. Air pollution in Asia comes from a number of sources. Particularly in China, we're looking at factories, and cars. With the improving economy, we see lots more stuff being made in factories, and of course, air pollution coming from those factories. A lot more people are driving cars in Asia, and cars put out a certain amount of exhaust. But we also see an awful lot of air pollution coming from wood cooking fires. A lot of people in different parts of Asia still cook with wood. And so wood puts out a certain amount of soot and carbon into the air, causing a lot of air pollution. We also have forest fires that contribute to the air pollution problem in Asia. Now, in terms of water pollution, it's different depending on which country you're talking about. In China, the water pollution primarily comes from industrial waste. That's output from various factories that put factory waste into the rivers, and those chemicals can do some pretty nasty things. In India, the primary source of water pollution is untreated sewage, untreated wastewater, especially in the Ganges River. A couple of notable features for Asia. Remember that Asia is the largest continent in the world, and it's also home to monsoon seasonal winds. These monsoon seasonal winds bring lots of rain and, as a result, lots of floods. Okay, let's talk about some history. So, if we take a look at Japan, that was one of the first things we looked at this year in terms of the history of Asia. We saw the United States had a big role in rebuilding Japan after World War II. We rebuilt their government, establishing a new constitution for them. We helped them to rebuild their economy. Let's go back there. Their economy is now very strong. In fact, it's referred to frequently as a miracle. An economic miracle. We helped to rebuild this after World War II in part to help prevent people from having to resort to communism, part of our plan to contain the spread of communism. And remember that Japan has very few natural resources. It's a country that relies on their human capital, their very educated and skilled workforce. In India, we learned that India had been a colony of Britain for a long time. And they were led by a man named Mohandas Gandhi, or Mahatma Gandhi. He led India in their fight to become independent from British rule. Now, Gandhi is famous for two things here. One of them is by leading this fight for the Indian people to gain independence from the British, but also for inspiring the nonviolent civil disobedience movement that is later used by people like Nelson Mandela and especially by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, Gandhi was, in fact, effective at gaining independence for India. It took a long time, but they gained independence in 1948. Unfortunately, independence did force them to divide. So India, and when it became independent, got divided into India and Pakistan along religious lines, with primarily a primarily Hindu population living in India and a primarily Muslim population living in Pakistan. We learned about communist China during this unit, and we learned the person that we need to know about there is Mao Zedong, or Chairman Mao. He led the communists in their takeover of China after World War II, which of course we know became a huge disaster. People have very few rights under communism, and the economy ends up being very poor. There are three major events we needed to know about. The first one was Mao's plan called the Great Leap Forward. This idea to produce more food and industrial products, which of course was a huge failure, resulting in 20 million people starving to death. The Cultural Revolution, that Mao led to eliminate any opposition to him or to the Communist Party. This ends up terrorizing the population of China for 10 years, ending only when Mao died in 1976. And of course, we had to learn about the Tiananmen Square massacre of 1989. This is when the government of China killed hundreds, probably thousands, but we definitely know at least hundreds of pro-democracy demonstrators, people who were asking for more political freedoms in China. The United States fought 2 wars in Southern and Eastern Asia, both with the goal of containing the spread of communism. The first of those wars was fought in Korea. This was, in fact, a successful war at containing the spread of communism, although the border remained at the 38th parallel, at the essentially where it was at the beginning of the war. We did keep communism from spreading to the south. In Vietnam, we did not successfully contain the spread of communism. We did fight that war to do so, but that did not, in fact, work out for us. Now, we do need to know about this man here, Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh was both the leader of the communists in North Vietnam, but also notable for his fight to free North Vietnam from colonialism under the French. So he's both an independence leader and a communist leader. Now we know that by the time the war ended, North Vietnam had conquered South Vietnam and reunified the entire country as the communist nation of Vietnam. Let's take a look at the governments of Southern and Eastern Asia. Now, in Japan, they have a constitutional monarchy. Now, constitutional monarchy in this case is democratic, and it's essentially a parliamentary democracy, really. But in a constitutional monarchy, you have an emperor in this case, but that emperor is purely ceremonial, has absolutely no political power whatsoever. And as a democratic country, Japan has lots of freedom and lots of citizen participation. India is also a democratic country. They use a parliamentary democracy as well, and they call themselves a federal republic because, of course, they have a federal system. And as a parliamentary democracy, it's a country with lots of freedom and lots of citizen participation. On the other hand, there's China. Now, we know China isn't really communist anymore. Their government calls itself communist, so they call themselves a communist state. But they do continue to be a dictatorship. In this case, an oligarchic dictatorship, because the country is run by the Communist Central Committee, or the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. And in an oligarchic dictatorship, you have no freedom and no citizen participation in the government. All right, so that was our review of the big ideas in 7th grade social studies. Good luck on the CRCT.